Alrighty. So give it a few seconds there. So can you see Kerbal?
I can.
All right, awesome.
I may have forgotten about the latency settings, unfortunately. Too late to stop that.
Okay, well, it is 9 o'clock. So I am going to start here. This is the main screen for Kerbal Space Program. I'm hearing you, Jeff.
I can.
All right, awesome.
I may have forgotten about the latency settings, unfortunately.
So one of the things I wanted to show you is a recent release of Kerbal Space Program. They partnered with the European Space Program, the European Space Agency, and there are missions in the game mirroring the current Bepi Colombo mission going to Mercury. That is a joint JAXA, which is the Japanese Space Agency, and the European Space Agency. And there's two different versions of that. And there's also the European Space Agency's Rosetta mission to Comet 67P, which is now in Kerbal Space Program. And it looks just like Comet 67P. They've added comets into the game with this release, and they have tails and everything, and it's really, really cool. So I have a astronomy at the beach sandbox I made. Kerbal Space Program has several different modes of play. Sandbox, you get access to all the parts and everything like that, and it can be kind of overwhelming. It also has a career mode where you start off at low tech level and no money to speak of, and you have to do missions to earn money and earn science, which you spend on increasing your technology. When you start off, first thing you see is this guy, Gene Kerman. So that's a nod to the NASA Gene Cernan, and he tells you about the game. And the this is the Kerbal Space Center. It's modeled after well, at least the vehicle assembly building is modeled after NASA's giant vehicle assembly building. We're just going to go right in there and see another Kerbal with a kind of familiar name, kind of amusing. But anyway, so let's one of the first things I get asked when I see Kerbal when I've been teaching Kerbal Space Program to kids from instructors is, can you make a rocket that'll blow up? And I'm like, well, it's kind of hard to make a rocket that doesn't blow up, but if you're trying to make one, sure. So I made one that will blow up. So let's load that guy. And he's up in the rafters here, pointing straight down. So let's launch him. So after you load your rocket, you put it out on the launch pad. And you wait for the little circle thing to go. Come on. Wow. Please don't tell me you just crashed. Oh, there we go. Okay, so here I am at the launch pad, pointing straight down. So let's put stability assist on, throttle all the way up, pedal to the metal, and so now it's chewing through fuel here. Let it go. So yeah, it's easy to build rockets that blow up. So one of the things I want to show you how to do, one of the first things is just building the simplest rocket you can, almost like a sounding rocket. And go back into the vehicle assembly building. So let's show you some of the parts available in Kerbal Space Program when you get in here. When you start off, let's do a new doink and go down. There we go. Way down. Okay, these parts are command modules. Sort by size here. They have everything from tiny little probe cores to single manned or single crewed capsules. These are much like Soviet capsules, and they even have a shuttle front end which can hold like 6 people. So a lot of different types of command modules. Got fuel tanks ranging from small to ginormous, engines ranging from small to ginormous, and they all have, some of them work better in vacuum, some of them are better for launching. Command and control, these are like vernier engines, RCS for doing docking and stuff, and reaction control wheels, which let you tilt and move the ship using electric current, which is pretty cool. Whole bunch of structural parts. Robotics, which I could do a whole thing on, but you can build helicopters and stuff. Very cool. Coupling, this is how you break stages and apart. Payload, this will let you put fairing around things to protect it on the way up, and large cargo things, and again all the way down. Experimental, electrical, utility like parachutes, kind of important. So again, let's do a new vessel, and we're going to do a very small one. And I'm not even going to try and recover it. Why do you keep going up there? Let's go back out and go back into it, because I don't like it going up there. Oh, crud. Well, I just closed Kerbal by accident. So, well, while I'm launching Kerbal again, let's talk about what it can do. Kerbal Space Program, while I'm loading it up here, allows you to build rockets Lego style. You can build rockets, you can build space planes, you can build landers and probes. It's got a million parts. It's got a user community that is just absolutely enormous. If you're into the Russian space program, there's mods that have all the Russian parts. If you're into NASA, there are mods which have all the NASA parts. Now, Kerbal itself, it's done using the Unity graphics engine, which is a gaming engine. A lot of first person shooter games are built on that. It The universe or the solar system that Kerbal Space Program gives you to play around in is about 1/10 scale of our solar system, and that was, again, game engine issues. There's a new version of Kerbal coming out, which they're promising all sorts of amazing things. We'll see what happens with that. So again, I'm launching Kerbal here. You should be able to see that. Yeah. So Kerbal Space Program has a learning curve that's shaped about like that. It's pretty difficult. They have some in-game tutorials. The first one is kind of confusing. Yeah, they ask you to do stuff with parachutes, which I never do. But other than that, they go through building up your knowledge on that. Now, there's a guy by the name of Scott Manley. He's an astronomer, and he's a Kerbal fanatic, and he's got tons of videos. That's COTTMANLEY on YouTube. He is a Kerbal god, and he has instructional videos all over the place on how to do everything, and he's got some pretty hilarious ones too. So I am launching into Kerbal here. All right, let's go back into my game, and hopefully I won't be in that the top of the vehicle assembly building anymore. All right. Yeah, that's better. All right, so we're gonna build a very small probe. So let's take this thing, which is almost like a CubeSat, tiny little probe. And these things don't have any reaction wheel control, so you can put one on there. Now, you wanna get it up, right? So this is your payload. This is what you're gonna launch. Well, first thing you do is, let's see, this doesn't need a whole lot of fuel, so I'll just use a small tank, sort by size, put that one under it. And engines. Well, There are engines that have gimbals and engines that don't have gimbal. A gimbal will take the cone of the engine and angle it, and it allows you to steer without verniers or anything else like that. The Reliant does not have a gimbal. The Swivel has a gimbal. They're a little bit easier to use. So now, and just to keep it from flipping over when it's going pretty slow, you put some fins on it. Well, one fin isn't going to do you much good. So you can go down to the symmetry here or hit X and go 2, 3, 4, 6, or 8. So you can do that with all the pieces. I'm going to put 4 of those on there. And right now it's just going to be sitting on the engine if I launch it. I don't want it to do that. So I go down and I put some launch clamps on. And I don't need 4 of them. So let's just do 2. So that is super simple. And this is my staging. And what this is saying is the engine is going to go off and the launch clamps are going to release and at the same time. And let's say I don't want to do this. I want the engines to go off first. So I move that down here. So now there's my staging. The engine's going to go off first and then I let the clamps go. I don't have a parachute on here. I could put one on here. Let's go do that. Let's say I want to recover it. So there's my parachute. And it goes to that. I don't want it on that stage. So let's do a new stage. Move that down there, the clamp. So now engines go off. I release, it goes up, and then I can do the parachute in the last stage. All right, let's launch it. Again, super simple rocket. Now, I was actually trying to destroy the vehicle assembly building with that rocket that blew up earlier, but apparently they changed it so that you can't destroy the buildings in sandbox mode. You can in career mode. You can crash into the vehicle assembly building and watch it come straight down. It's pretty entertaining. So docking right now. All right, so like when you get into a car, when you go to launch a rocket in Kerbal Space Program, you have a pre-flight thing you have to do. The first thing you have to do is turn SAS on. You can hit T on your keyboard and you see this thing pop up here, or you can just click on that. That is the stability system, or the sickness avoidance system, as they call it. The next thing you have to do is, right now, I don't have the pedal to the metal, and I need the pedal to the metal, so you hit Z and watch your throttle go up all the way there. X takes it down again, Z all the way up. So T, Z, pre-flight check done. Now you launch, hit the space bar, and that'll activate the next stage. So sitting here, my clamps are still holding it, using up fuel. Hit the next stage and the clamps let go. Now, remember I said this engine has a swivel on it. If I angle it a little bit using D, that's, whoa, okay, so too much. There we go, woo. Okay, so that flight was a total failure, but I still want to retrieve my rocket parachute. Turn that off. And now that's going to take about a minute to go down there, and I don't want to wait. So you can either click on that or you can time accelerate with the keyboard. And let it land. It slows down right before the end. Whoa, all right, that parachute wasn't enough. All right, so didn't totally destroy my rocket, recover vessel, and that is how you complete a mission. So that is super simple. Got most of my rocket back. Yay. Now the next thing we want to do is get a payload into orbit. And I could go suborbital. And it won't take long. Yeah, we'll put it into orbit. That's require a 2-stage rocket. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create like an Earth scanning satellite, like the Landsats. New. All right. See how fast I can do this. I want that probe core. That is a nice probe core. I need electrical power to run it, and I can either do a 3x2 or a 1x6. I want the 1x6. I want 2 of them. Put that there, extend them to see what it looks like. All right, I need communications. Let's put the relay on there. I only want 1 of them. All right, so now the science I want to do is the multispectral scanner. I'll put that right there. And now I need a battery because when I go into the shade, this thing only has like 10, which is like a D cell. So let's go down here, electrical, and give it, ooh, that's a pretty big one. So what? It's a big one. 1K, that's the big battery. All right. So that's my scanner, communications, power, probe core. This is what I'm going to get into orbit. Retract my solar panel. So next thing I do is I put the stage underneath this, go to fuel tanks, and I want, that's too big, that. And then go over here and engines. I have two choices on this. I could use a couple of these little guys, but I think I'll just use this guy. Okay, so that is my first stage. That's what I'm going to get into orbit. That's going to push that into orbit. The next thing I need to do is break this with a 112 decoupler. Doink. That will break the stage underneath it. And so now back to fuel tanks. I need one of these and a half of that. Where is you? There you are. Oh, wait, that's the wrong one. That one. All right, and then the swivel again, because it's got the gimbal. Yeah, I'm not going to bother with the fins right now. All right, so launch clamps, and this, oop, forgot one thing. Remember how I said a fairing? What this is, let's go to payload here. All right, this is a payload fairing. What this thing does is it puts like a fiberglass shell around the payload while it is in the atmosphere, so that the hurricane force winds that a rocket feels won't rip it to shreds. All right, looking at the staging here. Launch clamp's going to let go, and the engine's going to go. It's going to clip off. Let's just put that fairing at the top, and then the second stage engine. That looks good. How much delta V? Now, to figure out where you're going, you need to figure out how much delta V you got, and go to vacuum. Yeah, that's way enough to get into orbit. So delta V at sea level is going to be different than the delta V in vacuum depending on the engine. So at sea level, this has a thrust to weight ratio of 1.63. Now, what's a thrust to weight ratio? Well, you already know what it is. Let's explain it this way. Will a bottle rocket lift an elephant? No. Will a shuttle engine lift an elephant? Yes. So that's the thrust to weight ratio. A thrust to weight ratio of 1, it's going to sit there and hover like a helicopter. So you want something higher than 1, preferably 1.5 or better, near 2, to get it off the ground. So that's good. And that amount in vacuum is more than enough to get us into orbit. All right, so let's launch it. Now this is going to be a polar orbiting satellite. And the reason behind that is polar orbiting satellite that orbits the planet like that. The planet rotates underneath it. So over time, the entire surface of the planet will go under your scanner, and you can do altimetry, radar, biome readings, all sorts of stuff. And that's the way a lot of Earth orbiting satellites orbit our planet and the moon and Mars. So I am not docking. Go ahead. So let's go into a polar orbit. And I'm just going to use this as a mod. This does not come with Kerbal Space Program. This is a mod called Gravity Turn. Again, there's a ton of additions, mods for Kerbal Space Program which add functionality. This is one of them. So I want to go up to 150, I believe, 150 kilometers. And I want the inclination to be 90 degrees. All right, that's it. Launch. Oh, I am not launching from the Kerbal Space Center here. I am actually launching from the Woomerang launch pad, which is how you get to the space station, which I'll show you too. So that's probably actually better. I launch from there. So when I get up to 100, I start bending over, and when rockets launch, you'll see them doing this. This is called a gravity turn, and what this is it is a fuel-saving technique that gets you some horizontal velocity as you go up. When you're flying a rocket, you don't want to go straight up, turn, and then thrust like that, because that's just inefficient as all heck. So when we get up to about 30 kilometers here, that is when that fairing is going to pop off automatically, because you don't need it anymore. Do it. There it is. Pop it off. Reduces the weight a little bit, and you don't, because the atmosphere is really thin up here. So I am time accelerating here, because it takes about 10 minutes to get in orbit if you don't time accelerate. Now there's my fuel. I'm about ready to run out there of that stage, and you'll see that stage separate and fall away. I usually try and get it so that my first stage is about 1700 if I can get it. So there it falls away. So there's my second stage. So there's my orbit, and this is showing you the orbit. This isn't my trajectory. I launched from like right there. This is showing you the orbit around the center of gravity of the planet. The AP is your apoapsis. That is the high point of your orbit, and I've told it to go to 150. So it's going to keep going until it gets to 150 and stop. Now what I have to do is drift, get into the position I need to be in when I reach the high point so that I can raise the orbit. Right now, my low point of my orbit is still in the atmosphere. So what I have to do is come around here, get to the high point, and thrust in the direction that I am going. So are you time warping or not? Oh, no, it's not time warping. There we go. So now I'm time warping. So what I'm doing here is I'm going around the planet to the high point. I am orbiting in this direction, and I'm thrusting in that direction. What's going to happen when you thrust there, go through the planet, and it pushes your orbit? That's how you raise your orbit. When you raise your orbit, when you thrust, you raise it on the other side of the planet, which is kind of like crazy when you see it. All right, so now I am in a polar orbit. Turn the space station off. Okay, so this is a polar orbit, and this is how these scanning satellites work. Let's show you that. My solar panels are already out. Let's find it and start my scanner. So now you're seeing that it's scanning down on the planet. This is another mod for Kerbal Space Program called ScanSat. It adds a whole bunch of altimetry and biome and a whole bunch of scanners. So like I said, let me accelerate time here. You're going to see how this planet rotates underneath this, and over time here you build up. This is exactly how we scan the planet. So over time it'll hit the entire planet. So that is how you get something into orbit and get something useful into orbit. All right, so let's show you how to dock something. The other thing you can do, you can build space stations in orbit or cheat like I did. One of the things that Steam allows you to do is subscribe to vessels that people have shared on Kerbal Space Program, and I will show you the International Space Station, which I did not build. Right there, Steam. That's shared on Steam. Boom, there it is. Somebody built that, shared it, and I plagiarized it. But let's load. Oh, where is it? Kerbal Crew Transfer. I was playing around with this morning. So that is a funky looking rocket that has 3 Kerbals in it, and that's going to go and dock with the space station. So let's launch it. Now I am launching this from what's called the Woomerang site. It's very much like the site in Russia that we launched from. It's a much higher latitude, and it's easier to get to the space station from that site. The other launch site in the Kerbal Space Program is right on the equator. Great for getting into an equatorial orbit, not so great for getting into an orbit. The space station is 51.6 degrees tilted, and I'll show you that too. So stop that. I don't need you either. All right, so the first thing I do is turn the space station back on. So there's the space station in orbit, and I don't care about that guy now, so I'll turn him off. Blink. All right. So there I am, and there's the space station. So I'll set that as my target, and I'm going to use a different mod, and flight. Where is it? Send guidance, geez. Okay, so again, I want to go to 150, and not going to that yet. And I want to launch into the plane of the target. Engage. And now I got to wait for it. So now I'm time accelerated, and there goes the stars. So what I'm doing now is rotating around to the point where I can launch and get close to that orbit. 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so after I get to about 100 meters per second, I start the gravity turn. So that shows you my orbit so far. So this is MechJeb. It's a little different than gravity turn, and one of the things you have to do, I have found through the unlimited playing I've done with this, is that at about 15 kilometers, I've got to turn the thrust down until about 40 kilometers. Otherwise, I start getting plasma forming on the outside of the rocket. And sometimes that's not a good thing. So I am really cruising here. 14, 15. So now let's do that. You're probably going to see that plasma anyway on this. Yep. Just barely starting to see it there. It goes away at about 40 kilometers. And then I can turn that off and pedal to the metal. 40. There we go. So that was the launch escape system, which just flew out there. And so now these guys are let's see, the AP, I've told that to go up to 150. So you see, I'm not in the same plane as the space station here. So I will have to do what's called a plane change. When you orbit a planet, you always orbit the center of gravity of the planet. You don't, or there's this is not an orbit. So when you're in a different plane, you're got it. The space station's in this plane, and I'm in a different plane. There's only 2 points that those planes cross, and that is where you have to do the plane change to get both planes similar. So what I'm doing here again, going up to my high point, and I am thrusting in the direction I am orbiting. And this is pushing the low point of my orbit out the other side of the planet. Pretty soon it'll pop out and end up there. So The burn time here is about what? 20 seconds or something like that. There's my maneuver point. It's typically what you do is you split the burn time in half, and that is how far before the maneuver point you start thrusting. So here I am. I have circularized my orbit, and I got about 30% of my fuel left. Okay, so now I'm in orbit, but I am not getting to the space station with that. So I'm going to cheat and use the rendezvous autopilot in MechJeb again. This is a mod that just does everything. It's just awesome. So the first thing, I'm going to turn this on and I'll explain what it's doing. I don't need that anymore. So the first thing I need to do is I need to get into the same plane as my target. I am not right now. So I am the blue, space station is the yellow. What I do is I go down to the point where the two planes cross, angle myself 90 degrees to that plane of mine, and it pushes the orbit. That's really weird. So now I'm in the same plane as my target. And what it's doing here is it's determined that me being 150 kilometers up ain't enough to satisfy the 5 orbit limit to dock, so it's pushing me up further. So what it's doing is raising my orbit. Now again, what you're seeing is I'm over on the left, and I raise my orbit on the right. Now I'm going to go around to the other side of the planet to where I just raised my orbit, the new high point, and push my low point out to be equidistant away from the surface from my current high point. Watch the periapsis over on the left. Okay, so now I've circularized my orbit at higher. I'm at 221. And now what I need to do is a Hohmann transfer. This is, at this point, in an hour and 51 minutes, the space station will be in such position, and I will be in such position, that when I thrust retrograde opposite to the direction I am orbiting, it will pull the orbit back down and match where the space station is going to be. So whipping around here, and I got 34 minutes, so the next time I come around. So again, I have to slow down. So here I am, I'm in the position I need to be in already when I reach my maneuver point. Hopping around the planet. 6, 5, 4. So I have to slow down. I have to pull that part of the orbit in. So I thrust. I'm orbiting that direction. I thrust in that direction, and that pulls my orbit down right there. Now what I need to do is pull where I am down over here, and it happens to be the same place where I'm right next to the space station. So space station is going to appear around here in a green symbol. You'll see it, an icon. There it is. Maybe I need to use something with a fewer number of parts because it starts jittering here a little bit. Yeah, they're promising better graphics in Kerbal Space Program too. So there's the space station. I've told it I want to be 100 meters away from it. Hell, I'm fine here. All right, disengage. All right. Now, one of the things that you can do in Kerbal Space Program is dock. And let me tell you, docking is one of the hardest things. I'm using reaction wheels to push it here. is one of the hardest things you can do in the game. So you use this thing and you cheat. I have docked before. There's one of the training things, teaches you how to do it, and it brings up a congratulatory thing, congratulating you on you've just achieved the hardest thing in the game. So here's how you dock. You have a docking port in the front of your ship. You control it from there. And then you go find where you're going to dock to. And tell it, let's see, is there one up there? No. Back right there. Get out of the way. Set as target. Okay, so you don't use your main engines when you're near the space station because that would be bad. So you just shut them down. And so what you use are called RCS, and that is these little guys. And when I say autopilot enabled, so what that does, RCS, that stands for Reaction Control System. It pushes very gently on your spaceship. I'm actually going to time accelerate here so you're not bored to tears. Yeah. There we go. So these use what's called monopropellant, and monopropellant is it's not like the normal liquid fuel and oxidizer used by the big main engines. It reacts explosively when it is exposed to vacuum, so it pushes you. So I am moving in toward the space station here, toward that docking port. See my fuel, I got plenty of fuel left. I'm still time accelerating. I'm going to stop right now. There we go. So this is real time. So you can actually build space stations like this, and in the career mode of the game, there are missions to do that. Put a space station core up, and then start adding stuff to it. Now, there aren't any of that on this at all. This was all built. So there, I've docked. So now we are one ship. So and this is how you transfer Kerbals again. In the career mode game, you can transfer the crew. There's missions to do that. There's missions to send an engineer up to fix a part, yada yada. So after you're done with your mission, you undock, turn reaction control system on, and go to the other ship. There we go. So you get away from the space station. And I'll time accelerate now really quick. Get away from the space station. All right, so we turn the main engines back on. And let's go retrograde. So I'm going to land this thing now. So what we got to do is turn that direction. And yeah, that gets us away from the space station. All right. All right. So, this is going to be challenging. So let's say I deorbit right there. Add maneuver. Actually, just warp to right. I'm going to warp to this spot. Stop it. Go away. Thank you. Just warp there. So now I've told my ship to go around the planet to that point. You'll see I'm drifting away from the space station a little bit there. All right, so I want to land in there. So what I'm going to do now is aim my butt in the direction that I'm orbiting and thrust in that direction. I'm going to pull my orbit down into the atmosphere, and that will take me suborbital, like this. So there's a low point in my orbit right there. Get to about 4. There we go. So that's just a little bit above the surface. Okay, so I'm going to start re-entering about there, and I might hit the water about there. I might end up on land. We'll see. All right, so at this point, my service module here with the fuel engine and all of the stuff that I took the space station and didn't offload, I need to get rid of it. And you don't want to just get rid of it here because it'll be in the same direction. Usually what I do is just tilt myself a little bit over, get rid of it like that, off to the side. That way it won't plow into me when I go into the atmosphere, because I've had that happen. So now I am dropping like a rock, and it's going to take me about 20 minutes to reach the other side. I don't want to do that, so let's do that. Time accelerate. There are things like when you go to another planet, you have to time accelerate. It just takes too long. So now I've gone out of time acceleration here because I've hit the top of the atmosphere. So watch the heat shield right here. I'll time accelerate again until I start seeing plasma. So here I am dropping like a rock. And this is just showing your G-forces here. Right now I'm not experiencing hardly any G-forces at all. So there, the heat shield's starting to get a little red. Excuse me. I'm getting a little red faster. So I am plowing into the atmosphere right now, much like a meteor. 51. So there, we're starting to see a plasma trail develop. This is what happens to a meteor when it encounters the atmosphere. It starts ripping the electrons off atoms in the atmosphere, turning it into a plasma. That's exactly what's going on. And eventually, that heats that heat shield right up. So what's going on inside the cockpit? There's the heat shield getting red. So this is inside the cockpit. So that you're seeing up there is the service module that I ejected and didn't want to impact. Well, you're both re-entering. So you got a huge plasma trail here. All those sounds are from a mod. They're not part of the stock game. So there's a lot of cool mods. So I am plowing through the atmosphere, dropping like a rock, going about 2 kilometers per second here. So let's time accelerate until we slow down. When we get down to about 1200 here is when we start seeing the plasma go away. So there we go. So the plasma trail goes away. That thing either burns up or just goes out of our view. And now, oh, that's pretty. So I'm still dropping like a rock. I can't do my parachutes immediately because they'll get ripped. So, but it'll figure it out in a second here. Dropping like a rock, dropping. So there goes the parachutes. And hey, I made the water. There are mountains on Kerbin. I've made those. It's never fortunate. So trying to get in the water, actually there's a mod here I have it enabled called trajectories, which can actually show you where it'll think you'll come down. That's pretty helpful. So there I am. I've got a mod called Safe Shoot, which when it gets to the point of deploying those chutes all the way, it slows the time acceleration off, because the physics engine has been known to rip parachutes off the ships when those things pop in time acceleration. So Safe Shoot. All those communications you're hearing, all that's a mod too called Chatterer. It adds ridiculous sounding Kerbal voices. No, these are Kerbals, all right? So these are I think they're a cross between Frankenstein's monster and Minions, and they're not humans, because when you kill them, and you will kill them, you don't feel as bad. So again, this mission is now completed. I'm splashed down in the water. You go up here and you hit recover vessel. Go up there, recover vessel. So if you have crew, when you complete a mission, you have this mission summary screen that shows you if your crew's leveled up or all, and if you've earned any science and that kind of stuff. But since I'm in sandbox mode, you can't. None of that stuff's available. So, being a child of the Apollo era, I would be remiss if I didn't have an Apollo. And this is actually not my Apollo. This is one I got from Kerbal X. It is a spacecraft sharing site, and it pretty much faithfully recreates an Apollo. So let's launch that. I remember when I was a young man during the Apollo era. Oh my goodness, it was just achingly slow. Why is it taking so long to do all this? And now I know why it's taking so long to do all this. But when I was a young man, they just couldn't launch them fast enough. And then this game came out in 2015, and I'm like flipping out. Actually, this game, I would have to say, I've had a couple epiphanies playing this game, and a couple things I should have known. Like when I had a probe go past the moon and it got gravity assisted and left the sphere of influence of Kerbal, and I'm like, well, where's it go? Well, it goes in orbit around the sun. Well, I'm just like, oh, and then seeing how you intercept a planet is really cool. If I have time, I'll show you that. But this is the Apollo, and I love this thing, and it launches just like it. So let's do it. Take you up to 300, and I don't need to do anything else. God, I love that rocket. And this model even flies like a cow. Wow, I might have to lower that. Jeez, oh Pete, is that sucker loud. It's still loud. Jeez. There we go. So one of the things that you can do is put on a vessel a launch escape system, and they actually do work if you program them to work right. So I'm not going to put this into orbit. Let's say there's a critical malfunction on the Saturn here. Well, you hit the backspace key, and there's a launch escape system, and there's my guys. And see ya. Sorry, lunar module. That's just going to keep going and crash somewhere. But so this is you can do emergency escapes, and there's a mod. Let's revert flight to vehicle assembly. There is a mod, or there's actually a couple mods which cause random failures in career mode. So if you're a stickler and don't want to revert flight, say, oh, I screwed it up, I got to go fix it, you can crash your rocket. So a couple of the things that they have in here which are pretty interesting. are, let's show you a lander. This is a rover and a sky crane. I'm not entirely sure I like this one, but it works okay. So let's launch this and I'll show you how that works. And I am going to cheat and use the MechJeb landing guidance. This thing is really helpful in landing on other planets. Come on, come on, come on, come on. It when you're landing on the moon, a moon or something like that, the landing guidance does what's called a suicide burn. I mean, it burns as hard as it needs to at the last possible moment, and you swear it's going to plow into the surface, but it always lands pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go straight up and have this thing land, and let's do MechJeb landing guidance. So let's do T. Z, take it up a little ways. X and land somewhere. Leave it enough fuel. Leave it enough fuel. Oh shit. Pardon my French. Oh well, let's revert flight to launch. And what good would a simulator be if I couldn't cheat? Yeah, it's easy to blow things up. I'll say, so let's Alt F12, bring up the cheat menu and say, I don't ever want to run out of fuel ever. Okay, so now I'm going to be dropping pretty fast. So this is a very small rover. I've seen people build these sky crane things that are just gigantic. Oh, hey. Not what I wanted, dude. Apparently this one needs a reaction wheel on it. Oh, heavens. Well, let's eject that. And hey, I got a rover that works. Yay. So that was a spectacularly bad landing. But yeah, so there's a rover. For flight to vehicle assembly. Some of the things you can do in science, when you're in science mode or career mode, is you have to do research. So this thing looks a whole lot like the thing on the Curiosity rovers and stuff, right? That's a chem can, it got a laser in it, but it's got a whole bunch of different science things: thermometers, air pressure, gravimetric, um, radar, magnetometers, multispectral scanners. Something because it's science fiction, right? Mystery goo, whatever the hell that is. Orbital telescope. It's got some really big things too. Let's sort by size here. So some of these things are pretty gigantic. Like this guy, that's a really big signal. So let's open that guy up. Deploy? You're not gonna let me deploy? All right, fine. Use the other one. It's not what I wanted. Oh well. So anyway, this thing weighs a ton. So getting that into orbit requires a big rocket. What else did I want to show? I wanted to show you getting into the moon. All right, so let's launch the Kerbal X. But I am going to cheat because I can. I wanted to show you some things about orbital mechanics, which are pretty cool. That Kerbal Space Program teaches you. And I have to admit that because of what I've learned from Kerbal Space Program, a few science fiction movies have been completely ruined for me because every time I watch them, I'm like, that's not right. I was actually talking about that at a science fiction convention. So let's, it's not what I wanted. Okay, I am loading the Kerbal X, which is a stock rocket that comes with Kerbal Space Program. Kerbal X, there we go. You can land on the moon with this. So let's launch from the generic launch pad. But I don't want to take the 5 minutes it's going to take me to get to orbit, so I'm going to cheat. This is another mod. You can do this in one way with that cheat menu I popped up, but I like this. It's called Hyper Edit. Hyper Edit lets you do just a ton of different stuff. Alt H, orbit editor. I want this to be 150. Oops. 150. Around Kerbin. Apply. Boom! I'm in orbit. Cheater. And I don't need that stage, so go away. And turn the engine on. All right, so now I am in orbit. Quick. So cheated. So now to get to another planet or another body in Kerbal Space Program, you set it as your target, and you can do it manually, on which I will show you. So I want to set my orbit to where it's going to be, and I know I got to go about a quarter, so it's going to be about there. So let's say right about there is where I do my maneuver point, and you thrust in the direction that you're going, pushes your apoapsis out, and I'm encountering the moon. Where am I encountering the moon? That's pretty far out. So I need to either do that, and that stretches it in. And I love how it shows you doing this graphically. I need to move my maneuver point a little. And that's probably good enough. So this is telling me I need to add 789 meters per second to my current orbit to get to this point. This is a Hohmann transfer. This is how you get to other bodies in the solar system. When I get to it, this is the orbit I'm going to be on. I actually want it a little shorter. There we go. All right, so let's tell it to go. Execute. So what I have to do now is I'm here. Turn the space station off. Time warp. There we go. I have to go around the other side of the planet to my maneuver node. I should already be in the position I need to be in. I am. So when I get to the other side of the planet, I'm going to be exactly where I need to be to thrust. I am thrusting in the direction I am orbiting, that is prograde. And what that does, that starts to push my apoapsis out on the other side of the planet. That's just freaky, but that's the math. The Kerbal Space Program wiki has just an absolute ton of equations and showing you all this. And I love how I don't have to do any math whatsoever. But the only math I need to do is, do I have enough delta V to get from A to B? But watching your orbit grow like this is really, really cool. So let's set my focus on the moon and show you what happens when I get into that position. Once that apple gets about here, you're going to see it from the viewpoint of the moon here. It's pretty cool. There it is. Okay, so my maneuver is done, and doink. Now I am on a trans-lunar injection orbit. So let's go to here and do what they call a mid-course correction. You've probably heard them say that a lot. I want to get a little closer. So what I want to do is pull that in this way. Okay, that's not what I want to do. There we go. All right, so my periapsis is 129. It's still pretty high, especially if I want to land. It's more like it. All right, so 32, that's perfect. All right, so that's maneuver node. I need to change my, I need to add 76 meters per second to get to that orbit. Now, what this is showing you is that that is what my trajectory is going to be after that maneuver. Well, the moon is moving, so this maneuver is going to happen here. And what this is showing you is after that, if I do nothing, it's going to whip me right out of the system. So that's called a gravity assist, and that will kick the spacecraft right out. I don't want to do that, so I'll show you how to fix that. So now I'm going to get where I need to be pointed to do this maneuver. There, whip to the maneuver point. And that's just going to be really, it's not going to be very much at all. I got infinite fuel and I don't want that. I don't care. Okay, so I am on a hyperbolic trajectory. Now, what's interesting to note here is that if, when I get to this point, I'll be in, well, let's get there and I'll show you, talk when I get there. So now I'm heading in toward the sphere of influence of the moon, or in Kerbal, the MUN, M-U-N. So stop right there. That's how far away I am, and I am now in the gravitational sphere of influence of the moon. And that is the trajectory I'm on. If I do nothing, it'll whip me out of the system in 9 days. So I want to go into orbit or land on that planet. Well, the first thing I do is want to get into orbit. Well, what you do is you can either use maneuver and over, but I'm not going to cheat. The best place to do maneuver is your periapsis. And this is like a swing because you're going your fastest here, like a swing. When you're down here, this is where you want to do your maneuver. So you add the maneuver at the periapsis. And again, what you want to do is you want to slow down. So you want to do a retrograde. You want to thrust in the direction you're going, and it'll pull this back around like this. Now, I can stay in that elliptical orbit. A lot of radar and magnetometer testing orbits like to be like that, but I just want to circularize it. I want to go straight circle. You can tell it's going to be a circle when the periapsis and the apiapsis whip around. Like, there you go, right like that. All right, so that's my maneuver, and that'll put me in a circle. I can say maneuver planner, do it. So now what I need to do is need to get into the position I need to be in when I reach my maneuver node. I'm just going to put my hands off this and watch this. It changed your perspective there. You see how it flipped you around? So now I'm orbiting that direction or going by in that direction. If I thrust in that direction, it's going to whip my orbit around. Doink, now I'm in orbit. Keep going until I circularize it. Most of the energy used in correcting an orbit or lowering is done at the parts down here. When you get further out, it takes less energy. All right, so now I am in a nice circular orbit around the moon. And let's say I want to land right there in that giant crater. So it might move on me. So let's warp to here. So here I am coming around the moon. All right, you're not moving very much. So escape. So whoops. All right, so I want to do maneuver right about here. And what I want to do is continue to do retrograde and pull my orbit down until it goes into the planet or into the moon. And like that. So that'll plop me right there. Let's do a little bit more away from that crater. Yeah. Okay. Let's do it. Get into the position I need to go in, which is pointing my butt in the direction I'm orbiting. Oh, isn't that pretty? All right. Pulling my orbit in. Now again, this is a stock craft. I didn't design this, so I'm not guaranteeing how pretty the landing is going to be. All right. At this point, 0. I'll be dropping, and I'm going to use the really scary landing guidance. Auto deploy landing gear. All right, this has landing gear on it, so it's meant to land on the moon. Hopefully it'll clear the engines. Again, didn't design this one. So I'm just going to sell it to land somewhere, and you're going to see the suicide burn, which is just going to be scary. Yeah. But it always slows down just enough. That's so scary. There you go. Land on the planet. So now you can tell this guy to get out and climb down that. Oh, yeah. Retract the ladder. I missed it. All right. So then he can plant the flag and be the hero of the planet. Yay. And you can have any flag you want. You can make your own flag. So if you want a flag with your own logo on it, easy enough to make. Just a PNG that's about 360 by 160, something like that. Really easy. So it is 10 o'clock. I think it is time for me to go. Unless anybody has any questions, I have not been. Anybody have any questions? So again, Kerbal Space Program is available on Steam. It is available on teachergaming.com, which is pretty cool. It's a whole bunch of games. Universe Sandbox is also available on there, and there's just a ton of stuff. But there is an educational version of Kerbal Space Program called Kerbal EDU that has a whole bunch of physics experiments in it, which would be good for a physics class, that kind of thing. My wife and I are both volunteer NASA JPL Solar System Ambassadors, and we ran an after-school club where we had Kerbal Space Program on 15 PCs in there, and the kids just loved it. some of them actually liked getting stuff into orbit. Some of the kids just liked building some of the weirdest things you'll ever see. Like one kid built what I would consider a rocket castle. It was gorgeous. And when he launched it, it split apart into a million pieces and blew up all over the place. And at the end of that session, he came up to me and said, "Mr. Trembley, I killed 300 Kerbals today." I'm like, that's nice. That's what I want to be telling your parents. But he was having a blast, and it's very creative. Another cool thing about it is, if you build something that doesn't have the right thrust to weight ratio, it won't get up. It, waste fuel, crash, whatever. Well, you go back into the vehicle assembly building, fix your problem, and figure it out. And it is absolutely great for doing that. And it can be very addictive. Like I said, 4,000 hours playing this game. So again, I think the best environment to play to learn to do this game would be in a classroom environment where you have somebody who knows how to play it and is showing you how to do it. Failing that, again, YouTube videos with Scott Manley, and there's a couple other ones out there which teach you how to do it. It also has down here the in-game KSpedia. This is very good about telling you how things work, and also how orbital mechanics works, all the things I've just shown you. It's all in here. It's just beautiful, and it shows you about different things you need to do to build rockets, basics, advanced, forces, parts, and what they all do, and different things for aircraft basics like forces, center of gravity, lift, thrust. It's just amazing the amount of stuff that went into this game. Kerbal Space Program 2 was scheduled to come out in April of this year. That didn't happen. It got pushed back to probably April of next year, but they're promising interstellar travel and parts from like 1950s interstellar travel concepts and things like that, and colonization. And so that ought to be pretty interesting. All the different science parts you have, it comes with a whole bunch by default. You can, let's see, yeah, ScanSat. This is a mod, and DMagic. These are both mods that add parts. So your default parts, where are they? Yeah, it doesn't say that there. Anyway, default parts are pretty limited. ScanSat adds a whole bunch of different parts that lets you do the scanner thing that I showed you, gives you that map. DMagic Orbital Science has different stuff that has some asteroid science and experiments, which are pretty cool. And one of the mods Kerbal Space Program just added was experiments that you can deploy on the surface of bodies that will collect science over time. So that's pretty new. So I just absolutely love this game. For teaching you how rockets work, how the space program works, and how you get things into orbit and do the science. There's not much like it. So with that, I'm going to bid all you adieu. Please come back tomorrow. I'll be doing at 9 o'clock a tour of the solar system with Space Engine, another fantastic app. And we have a whole bunch of really good things planned for tomorrow. So good night all, and I'll see you later.